Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a pretty interesting topic today, which is going to be the wonderful world of Prime Day, planning for the next big events, digesting the previous events, and all the excitement in between. So I'll be your host for today. I'm head of operations here at Venture Forge. I've been within the agency nearly 2 years now, loving it, and lead a very talented team this side. With me, I've got some really exciting guests also, which I'll let them do their own introductions. So maybe starting on my top left, Emma, if you want to kick it off for us.
Hello. So I'm Emma. I'm head of client success at Venture Forge. So I am that overall helicopter that's just looking at all of our clients at once, making sure that we're doing as we promise, and then just deep diving into the strategies and everything in between strategies and growth. It's a really exciting time looking at how Prime Day has been, how it's worked, how it's not worked, and then what we're planning for the future.
Thanks a lot, Emma. And then next on my screen is PJ. PJ, if you'd like to give us an introduction.
Thanks, Trav. My name is PJ van Rooyen. I head up e-commerce and brand for Ultimate Sports Nutrition, or USM in short. We're a nutrition and supplement company based out of South Africa. We were founded in Pretoria, South Africa, now selling in over 40 countries across the world, primarily looking after Amazon and e-commerce in general in the UK and in South Africa. Spent the last 8 years or so in the world, the wonderful world of e-commerce, the last 4 months at USN, so I'm still very new to USN, but my focus so far has been just rebuilding the Amazon operation pretty much from the ground up, looking at everything from listing architecture all the way through to strategy for the rest of the year. So good to be here and fantastic to be a part of the conversation.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, PJ. And fun fact, first protein shake I ever had was a USN one, and they still just continue to be delicious nearly 20 years later, weirdly enough. So thanks for joining us. And then Mike, if you'd like to give us an introduction also.
Yeah, I am Mike. I'm the head of advertising and media at Venture Forge. So myself and the team are responsible for all of the advertising, the DSP, and everything included on that side for our clients. I've been having some very deep dives into Prime Day, the performance across all of our clients and what we're seeing externally in the market. And I'm sure I'll be able to share a few of those insights within this webinar today.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, everyone. So just before we kick off, some general housekeeping rules. If you feel any need to ask questions, you feel any inspiration throughout the process, we do have a question function within this application. Feel free to ask the questions. We do have some of the team in the back end that will be able to answer it if we can't get to it directly. But at the end of the webinar, I'll also be sharing everyone's details and then just an overview if you want to reach out to us directly for some more in-depth questions, if I can say it like that. So just before we kick off properly, we generally start this with a poll. Hopefully you guys should see a poll that pops up now pretty soon. And within that poll, there should be an opportunity for you to just let us know what's been your biggest challenges after Prime Day. So let me see if that will pop up. Cool. If not, then we can go ahead. Has anyone seen the poll pop up? There we go. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay there. So if anyone can just answer that, we'll use that as a little bit of a launching pad to go into the discussions for today. So I'll just give everyone a few seconds just to answer that, and then we can get going.
There's always a tech glitch, isn't there?
It's normally my wind-up internet. Fun times.
Hey, you're in London. It should be nice and fast.
Well, it feels like I'm speaking from the center of the sun today. It is so hot. So I'll blame it on that.
Kev, looking at your poll, I feel like I could vote for every single one of those options. So it's difficult to nail down one or two, but it's I could very easily go for any of those.
Hey, well, lucky for you and for the watchers today, we'll be going through pretty much each and every one of these. Cool. So some mixed responses, but a lot of heavy weighting to know whether to increase or reduce ad spend. Preparing for the next peak event is creeping up, so I think we've pretty much got most of our votes in. And we've got a clear winner on that. So maybe let's start off there with you, Mike. Knowing whether to increase or reduce ad spend during Prime Day, what are the benefits of increasing ad spend? What's the benefits of reducing ad spend, if any? and maybe just what some of the metrics are that we look at and how those sort of lead into the operations side.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting point, and anyone that has been on one of these with me before will always know that I say it depends, because it always depends. I will take the assumption that spend has increased over Prime Days. Most sellers will, or sellers and vendors will have increased over Prime Day to capitalize on that traffic. Now, I'll have a two-pronged attack here towards this answer, where there is benefits in both. You can continue to retain that higher ad spend level. There is benefits towards this. You should have gained a lot of momentum if you've had a successful Prime Day, a good volume of sales coming through. You want to retain that as much as possible, realistically. By keeping that higher ad spend, that's how you're going to keep those rankings. That's how you're going to keep that higher level. Now, there is a strategy within that as well, which you could look at, which is a lead out promotion of Prime Day also. So a lot of sellers, if they know that their market is going to be extremely competitive over the Prime Day period, and this is something that you might want to take moving into the next Prime Day, into Black Friday, into Cyber Monday, all these different areas, what a lot of sellers and vendors will be looking to do is seeing where they can capitalize. If you've got a big market of lots and lots of competition, how can you effectively still get a chunk of that share whilst not paying an enormous amount? So this ties into the reduced ad spend as well. So a lead in or a lead out strategy could be very, very viable from that perspective. So starting just before Prime Day, getting your promotions going, and still actively participate within Prime Day. But then post Prime Day, you've got a lead out strategy as well. So you're still actively looking at which promotions you can run, how you can run these deals, and ultimately still continue that peak for a longer period over Prime Day. So in short, you can increase or decrease in terms of the ad spend. In general, you probably will reduce down from the higher spend that you have seen, but as a part of a strategy, there is very, very valid reasons to keep that spend at a higher level, at least for the next few weeks after Prime Day, then maybe start to bring it back down to normality.
Brilliant. And just for maybe some of the viewers' information, what type of ad metrics are you going to be looking at, and what type of ads sort of drive the most impact? Is it sponsored products, sponsored display? Obviously, DSP is a whole different sort of argument when it comes to it. But yeah, what would your recommendations be to sort of make the most out of Prime Day, if I can say it like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, realistically, we're all going to be looking at return on ad spend or ACOS or sales as the big drivers, ultimately as to whether it's been a success or not. And that should inform your decisions on what goes next. What determines success is independent to each and every business, of course, depending on the uplift that you have seen. But ultimately, any increase in ROAS, any increase in sales, you're expecting to see some good metrics from there. From a campaign side and what you're ultimately using, sponsored products are your bread and butter. They are the ones that should be driving a lot of the sales. But again, this is a period where if you've got a lot of competition within a market, you need to be looking external. You need to be looking at other places that you can gain an advantage, whether that is through sponsored brand, sponsored display, or even DSP as well.
Perfect. And you mentioned obviously determining results and the success. So maybe going past the ads, PJ, Emma, if you guys want to maybe open on that, why does the post-Prime Day analysis matter just beyond ads? Obviously, everyone wants to make sales, but how far does profitability, what is conversion rates? Well, what other metrics are you guys looking at beyond the ads metrics only?
Definitely the conversion metrics. And for me, one of the biggest points that it highlights is whether your products are retail ready or not. If competitors are set up and their products are immaculate, the content is exactly what they need, they are going to win that sale over you. So when you're looking at conversion, if you're getting a lot of traffic to that product and then it's not converting, then there's something that's highlighting the fact that people are not converting on that product. So for me, it's really, really important to look at your conversion rates, look at how the consumers are purchasing your products or not purchasing your products, and really, really take that into consideration. Just even out of Prime Day. Prime Day obviously accentuates or just enhances what your customers are potentially seeing. So take that data and use it for outside of Prime Day and really hone in on the fact that what your customer is seeing is what's going to help them convert. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more, Emma. I think Prime Day, it's what, about five years old now. So we've run a couple of Prime Days since 2021. Obviously, this one was a bit of an anomaly just because it was the earliest one we've experienced. But certainly, looking at what happens post Prime Day, I feel like Prime Day has become less of a 2-day, 4-day event, call it what you will, but it's become less of an event and more of a sort of a deep dive in terms of what the brand is doing and what you're doing on Amazon, and what you do with that data 4 to 6 weeks after the fact, I think becomes far more important, whether that's running a deal on something that hasn't converted quite as well as you thought, whether that be somebody who's added to cart but hasn't converted ultimately. I think it's what you do with that data post Prime Day that makes it really valuable, and essentially having it run in either June or July kind of sets you up for the rest of the year. You know where to focus. I feel it kind of hones your focus a little bit in terms of October, November that's coming up, and certainly December, depending on what category you're in and seasonality. But certainly it does, to Emma's point, I think it accentuates where you need to focus on something that's either working or not working for a brand.
Brilliant. And yeah, PJ, you obviously mentioned this year was a little bit earlier. Obviously, historically, is normally July time. This year it was June time it kicked off. What impact did you see on sales, and why do you potentially think that is? Obviously, you can either love or you can hate the 4-day deal period. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of it. It doesn't create sort of that demand and that excitement that it used to, like, I need to buy right now, else the deal's gone forever. But yeah, what sort of implication do you think it had doing it sort of a month earlier?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. To your point, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the 4-day event. I think 2-day just creates that scarcity, creates that sort of urgency over the 2 days. I think certainly I haven't looked at the data in depth, and I'm sure Mike probably has a little bit more, but certainly day 1 you see a big spike, day 2 and 3 goes through a bit of a lull potentially, and then day 4 you would hope that there's a big spike again, just for folks that are trying to get those deals last minute. But certainly not a big fan of the 4-day. I'd rather go back to 2 days. I think where it does become difficult is your fulfillment deadlines are still pretty much set, whether that happens in July or in June. You still have to ship all of your fulfillment. You have to get your house in order essentially, and make sure that fulfillment centers are good to go by sort of, I think it was May, 23rd of May or so. So it's far more about what you're doing sort of below eye level that folks aren't seeing, and making sure that you're geared for success. But certainly the short deadline of when that date gets announced makes it difficult as well. And June, I think, I'm not saying it caught folks off guard. You still have time to prepare, but certainly when you're working towards a July event, it does become a little bit tricky in June. But you kind of have to roll with the punches, and you have to be agile. But yeah, I think the potential issues that we would have seen is just making sure that you've got your fulfillment in order before the event.
One interesting thing, a lot of people that I was just talking to, like outside of work and who were shopping on Amazon, they were waiting for that day 3 and 4, expecting further discounts. And that whole extended now period of 4 days is just shifting the mentality and the expectations that you're going to make more. You're going to get more of a deal on day 4, but that's not necessarily going to happen. So it's really skewing the results on how each day is working throughout that period. I do agree. I think 2 days is the correct time frame for this sale to be on. And it just adds that urgency around shopping and shopping the deals, not waiting for more.
And anything from ad side, Mike, that you saw maybe certain spikes in traffic? Obviously, we knew the World Cup was on. There was a heat wave. I mean, literally, there could be a million factors that happen within Amazon that determines buying behaviors and buying patterns with customers. Was there anything that you noticed, particularly from an ad side, that sort of made you go, that's pretty interesting?
Yeah, well, we've had many discussions about this in terms of the external factors between ourselves, where the heat was a big factor into what people were buying. Ultimately, some people were using what disposable income they had from Prime Day and spending it in areas that they didn't want to spend it on. Realistically, is a luxury. They were like, I need a fan. I need something that I'm going to buy because this heat is dreadful. So there's some small factors that we could assume from that side. From a peak side, and when we saw the peaks, day 1 naturally is almost always going to be one of the best, because it's the deals are here, they're here now, let's go get them. And we still saw that trend, and we do see it every year that day 1 is strong. But absolutely what Emma was saying, there is a delay And in a 4-day event where it's pushed towards the back, people are looking at, I'm trying to get this last minute, or I'm waiting for the best deal. There's a few factors that do tie into there. So day 4, generally one of the better days across the board. But I saw this year that it was flatter than what we saw last year over the 4-day events. So day 3 and 4 was much more similar to each other versus what we saw the previous year, where it was day 1 brilliant, day 2 and 3 fine, day 4 strong again. So now it was more day 1 great, day 2 fine, day 3 and 4 fairly steady at an okay level, but nothing groundbreaking this year. It also does highlight my disdain for the 4-day event at the same time, for the exact same reasons that we spoke about.
We're all
Yeah, that's it. We're all in agreement, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers are the same. I mean, doing deal funding for an additional 4 days, it gets really expensive, especially if Amazon comes asking for some really deep SOAs. Obviously, couple that with increased cost to advertise. Yeah, it just becomes a pretty expensive practice that a lot of brands just don't want to indulge in ultimately. Maybe taking a bit of a step back, and obviously Amazon is always about focusing on the fundamentals. Ahead of Prime Day, Black Friday, Christmas, any peak event, what do you generally like to review first? Is it your content? Is it your pricing? Is it setting goals to try and claw market share away? Is it doing aggressive advertising, Mike, to try and steal that market share away? Is it trying to defend that? Yeah, maybe if you guys can just give us some insights. What do you review first as soon as you know Prime Day is coming or Black Friday is just around the corner? Well, what do you guys like to do as general housekeeping to give you the best foot forward for success?
With majority of clients, it's that first question of, what do you want to gain from this? Do you want to gain quick, fast growth where your margin may be affected, but then you're increasing your potential of your market share, you're increasing your orders, you're kind of building up that algorithm within Amazon? Do you want sort of that medium tier growth where your margin's more protected, you're still working towards that growth level, but you're doing it in a more considered way? Or do you want to almost ride the wave of that increased traffic, not really invest in it too much, but look into how that data and the increased traffic can then help you grow slowly or more profitably moving forward? I think those 3 key questions help determine what to do next. Because if your answer is the first one, where you want to grow faster and you want to invest in that growth, can you do that? Do you have the inventory to work towards that? Do you have the budgets to then work towards your increased ad spend? Those 3 questions are vital to then work towards the further strategy.
And I don't know how to say all of the above to what you said before, Trav, where realistically all of those factors are extremely important. It's when you do them and how you do them, where you prioritize. I would say, I know that from what I would be recommending immediate term, because we're still quite close to the Prime Day window, just only a month out, is download as much data as possible that you have from this Prime Day, because that will set you up for success for the next ones, not just Prime Day, but for your Black Fridays, your Prime Day 2 later in the year as well. All of the key events that happen, the tier 1 events throughout the year, follow similar trends. You know, as much as they're in different parts of the year, there will be different buying habits around gifting at certain points as well. They do follow very, very similar trends. I know that a good amount of our clients have onboarded with us and they have had tons and tons of data from previous years, and it is an absolute blessing. You know, just a day-by-day basis of when you start to see the peak, when you start to see it increase, because it won't just be on Prime Day. You might see an uplift beforehand. You might see a little downshift beforehand as well, as people are waiting. And then what does the lead out look like after Prime Day at the same time? So ultimately, get the data now and then work on the decisions, I would say, using that data to say, I want to go for market share. I want to get more aggressive sales. I want to target in these different areas.
Perfect. And PJ, maybe from brand side, anything that you can recommend for other brands? Obviously, you are in the sports nutrition category, highly competitive category. You guys have done some incredible work with your new content. Obviously, that drives conversion, it drives information, and it drives purchasing surety with customers, if I can say it like that. Do you have any insights or any tips, recommendations, observations that you'd like to share?
Yeah, Trev, I think just from a brand perspective, I think what I've taken out of Prime Days is, and this is across not just this year, but certainly previous years, is don't be either too harsh or too critical on yourself. I think Prime Day is a phenomenon that I think a lot of brands feel like it can make or break a year, depending on how their Prime Day goes. Don't be too harsh if it didn't go that well, but also, don't pat yourself on the back too hard, because it is a bit of an outlier. So it's about just level setting, learn from your mistakes. I think if you feel like you could have done a better job on content leading into the event, or if you feel like you could have done a better job with fulfillment, learn from those mistakes, I think. But similarly, if things are going well, build on those successes. I think that's, for me, certainly it's taking the good with the bad. I think from our perspective, we are sort of, a lot of the talk has been about 3P versus 1P. From our perspective, we're on the vendor model. I think there it's a lot about what you can control. Obviously, the big bugbear on 1P is not being able to control some of the things that Amazon takes out of your hands from a control perspective, but just making sure that you're as event ready as possible. And really, to Mike's point, is having as much data as possible, either from previous events or just from what you do in those immediate next 4 to 5 weeks after the event, to set yourself up and just keep that sort of hype around Prime Day going for at least a couple of days longer. So I think, level setting your expectations is important. And then also, from my perspective, it's reporting back to the business to say, yes, we did, we had a really good 4-day event, but again, it's not something that I can hang my hat on and say this will continue for the rest of the year, because it is such a outlying event for us.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I mean, data drives all decisions. Numbers don't lie. It's the only metric that just doesn't lie. I'm casting my mind back to many moons ago when I was actually at Amazon, and data was king. Obviously, to try and get data out of Amazon is like trying to get blood out of a stone. It's really difficult. They can give you benchmarks, they can give you category insights, but ultimately they won't let you know how you've done compared to your competitors. How would you recommend benchmarking yourself against competitors? Obviously, there's some data providers that we use, sort of such as Prism, to identify market share changes. But how do you guys determine success, and if what your plan put in place essentially has been a success to either get market share, drive sales, drive profitability? What are your determining factors on that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, sorry to interrupt you, I think from my perspective, it is tough unless you've got a really strong agency partner, and we're lucky that we've partnered with Venture Forge very recently. But unless you've got somebody who's got some really strong category insights, it is tricky. And I do feel for brands, I've been in that position where we kind of ran a very lean one-man operation without any agency help. So it certainly helps to have that insight. Benchmarking can be incredibly difficult. I think just being sort of in the weeds of your account on the day, looking at sort of native platform on Amazon itself, looking at what you can from a back-end perspective, it's important to get a feel for both. And then, like you said, trust the numbers. Make sure that the data that you are receiving post or pre-Prime Day speaks to your goals that you've set in place. I think it helps, even if it's not something that it doesn't have to be a massive strategy for the event, but even if you've just written a couple of goals down on a piece of paper before the time, if you can just benchmark against those, and if you can see an uplift or a downshift in ACOS, or an uplift in ROAS, or market share, whatever the case is, I think it's important just to have some kind of goal in mind. And it doesn't have to be big, ambitious plans. It can just be a little bit more. If you've spent more, did you get more money back? Did your ACOS reduce? Did your ROAS increase? So I'd be keen to hear from Mike as well, just in terms of, what does benchmarking look like from an advertising perspective? But from a brand perspective, it's really just be in the mix, make sure that you're keeping an eye on your listings, native platform, and in the back end as well. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll follow on from this then. In terms of that side, you've nailed a fair few, because of course there should be levels from an advertiser perspective where you're looking at ACOS, TACOS, ROAS, the overall sales and what the goals have been from that. But a lot of the goals you should determine beforehand and quite early as well as to what you're looking for, because that will help drive decisions of what you ultimately do. So if we are, let's say we're aiming for a 10x increase in sales and it's just enormous, you need an appropriate budget behind it, right? It needs to be realistic, this goal that you're going to set. So the actions that you take before Prime Day will then impact what the goal ultimately will look like, to say if it's achievable or not. When I'm looking at benchmarking versus competition and how you've done there, There are a few just organic methods that you can be looking at as well on the platform. So just the overall organic ranking, looking at the bestseller category is a nice way to have a little bit of a metric within there. Second to that is actually just seeing the number of units sold. Now we can see this under the title, and I think everyone on this in this meeting will be familiar with the 500 plus bought in the past month, 1,000 plus bought in the past month. You can get some insights there very quickly, very organically, just by having a quick look at what the competition are doing. So it's a nice little method to go, this is a sense check, without having to go into a massive deep dive into the data. But if you do want to deep dive a little bit more, there are brand metrics that you can get within console at the same time, which will give you some insights on where you are versus the market. And if you have a partner at Amazon on the advertising side, they can give you a little bit more data. But as Trav said, not the easiest to get at times. So I'd rely on whatever you can get organically that is free and available within Amazon.
Brilliant. And yeah, sorry about that, everyone. Classic. As soon as you need to actually do something, internet just tanks, runs perfectly all the time of the year, and just when you actually need it, it doesn't pull through. So hopefully when my screen froze, I was looking cool and it was quite flattering, but probably
You
not.
look like you were fast asleep.
Not a reflection, not a reflection. Yeah, so sorry about that. So Mike, you also mentioned obviously focusing on the benchmarks, the ACOS, the TACOS, all that. When should budgets be adjusted? Should it be just a set and forget function, or should you be constantly refining it based on almost live learnings as you go along, essentially? We know ads needs times to sort of ramp up, get to the right people. That's actually...
I think Trav's frozen again, so I'll just take over already.
Yes.
So budgets, I just got great freeze. Oh, you're back. There you go. I'm carrying on without you, Trav. It's fine.
Sorry.
Yeah, budget. Very good question on that. And I think there's a two-prong attack where you can go, this is a set budget, this is what you've got to spend. It could be a monthly budget, and then we just need to, I was going to say, ration it throughout the month so you can really build up towards the end of the month. That was the case in June, at least for this Prime Day. In a July Prime Day, it's a little bit easier where it's at the start of the month and you can go gung-ho, and then afterwards you can go, okay, if we need a little bit more budget, can we get it? Or can we take it from somewhere else? So in June specifically, I think definitely the preference wouldn't have been to have a set and forget budget, and it's just here's a dedicated one. There are always cases where things will run out of budget quickly on Prime Day. There's a lot of browsing. There's a lot of people just having a look. So there's going to be more clicks and not necessarily more orders for a lot of the search terms and the ads that are appearing. So having that extra budget is important, full stop, but being flexible about it is arguably the most important bit afterwards as well. If you are seeing great results, if you're seeing strong sales come through, again, from both an organic and a paid perspective, if you're seeing a return out of that as well, I would absolutely be going back and saying, can we spend more? Can we do more? The hard thing linking it to before is that we know that there are different trends throughout every single day of Prime Day. So we can have a fantastic day one, we increase for day two, it's a bit rubbish, because that's what we expect. Day three went flat again, so it's okay. But then day four, that might be where you go, actually, this is extra budget I can get. Can I really push it on day four, please? Because this is where people get the last minute deals. It's their last chance to buy. So whilst there is a set and forget that can work and it's fine, you can ration it out, you can have your set budgets each day. The preference is definitely going to be the flexibility on the budget side. But again, trends, things will happen. So we need to be careful of how that is allocated.
What's really fun to see during Prime Day is the communication within our agency, and it will be the same within other agencies. On that flexibility note, we've got dedicated channels for each client, and you're seeing that communication around budgets and what's working, what's not working. And that flexibility is fed through from the brands through to us as an agency. And yeah, that set and forget doesn't always work. Like you said, Mike, we do need that flexibility. Just a quick note on the benchmarking from an organic perspective. There is a bit that you can do with that. So looking at the organic keyword positions, who's coming up for certain keywords. Is someone coming up as 1 and you're 12? Is there something that you can do to look into why organically someone's doing a bit better for you? And that may be just because of the Amazon algorithm. They've managed their inventory a lot better. Amazon are favoring them for some reason or another. But there's a checklist that you can almost go through to see why organically someone is performing better than you. More often than not, it's because of price, and someone will have gone a bit heavier than yourself or your brand. So from an organic perspective, it's really handy to see from an organic search who's coming up first, and just taking a deep dive into their listings and seeing what they're potentially doing a bit different.
Yeah, and I think just to speak to Mike's point about flexibility and fluidness, I've always considered budgets to be fluid. Not so much in terms of what your ultimate cap is. If you've only got X amount to spend, that's your cap. But being able to be flexible with that budget, and when I talk about flexible, I mean you've got your three or four ad types that you want to run: sponsored product, display, brands. But being able to be flexible and pull back on sponsored product on the day, we all know it's very expensive on the day on those events. So pulling back a little bit there, if you can afford to do so, if your organic rank is looking really sharp. But then post-event, being able to look at your SKU, look at the mix of ads that you're running and the campaigns that you're running. Can you push a little bit more budget into sponsored brand campaigns, for example, to keep your brand top of mind? Pull back a little bit on sponsored product, stick it into sponsored brand if you choose, possibly display, but being able to be flexible in the moment. Certainly on the day, we know it's expensive, but often after Prime Day, brands aren't doing enough in terms of regaining that click. And if you can be agile with that budget, I think there's a lot of upside for you to be able to be flexible with those budgets.
Brilliant.
I'll jump in a little bit extra on that as well, because I think in an absolute detail on that point with the post Prime Day as well. I know we started with that, but it's also like a very good recurring point. Remarketing is key for a lot of different brands, ultimately post Prime Day. And I've been shouting about this for years. It feels like because of the increased footfall that you get over any peak event, full stop, you are going to have lots and lots of consumers just looking at your product. Whether they're buying or not is a different story. You know, that's going to be down to everything else that's happening within the market. But what you can do post-event, or even still during the event as well, but you probably see more success post-event, is views remarketing. So people that have viewed the product, you can actively go and look out to them again on a 30, 60, 90 day. I think it goes up to 180-day cycle on views remarketing. So you can really push on customers who have seen it, potentially not purchased. You also have purchases remarketing. So for you exactly, PJ, where you've got a product that is a consumable, it's going to go out after 60 days or so. I want to remarket to that person, the person that bought it on Prime Day. I want to make sure that you're top of mind. I think it's after 3 purchases, you've got a loyal customer, you know, in general, with any repeat purchase. So if you can get to that cycle, if you can help that phasing along, that's only going to improve the overall performance. And these are some of the insights that you can take from Prime Day and using that data to go, I know there's people out there that have seen my product that might not have purchased yet, or they have purchased, I need them to purchase again. Let's go spend and invest on that side. Ultimately, you can do that within the console through sponsored display. If you have DSP, you can do it on that side as well, which arguably could be better, but is more expensive. So just use it in console.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. And on the topic of budgets, obviously, pounds and pence matter at the end of the day. Well, what do you guys say to sort of the naysayers within your business that Prime Day is just a fad? It's just you throwing money at Amazon. I believe Prime Day does hold value. There's a lot of organic traffic on site. People are already primed to spend money, pardon the pun there. How do you escalate that to your senior stakeholders to essentially get them to open up the floodgates, if I can say it like that, for budget? Well, how do you convince your senior stakeholders and people in your business that, look, we need to go hard on Prime Day? It's kind of a do or die event, if I can say it like that.
I have one really, really good example. We had someone that really didn't want to invest in Prime Day. They didn't want to, not that they didn't want to see the benefit, but they just didn't see the benefit in marketing or spending money on what is deemed as a fad. People will buy no matter what. Let's just move over. We asked to just trial it. Like, let's just give it a go. If the data says that it doesn't work for you, then that's fine. But if it does work for you, we can show that there is so much more potential. What we found with this client is that the proof was in the pudding. We showed them how that Prime Day was exactly what they needed within that exact sector, and they absolutely flew through sales in a profitable way, margin was maintained, and it was absolutely incredible. So that might not necessarily work for every client, but if you're able to prove it and prove it with the data and with that profitable revenue and growth coming through, like, do it, push for that opportunity. I think there's a very good northern saying, which is shy burns getting out. And from an agency perspective, like, you have to ask and you have to be able to show that proof.
Yeah, I think certainly, I think from a brand perspective, it's that fine line of, and I think you hit the nail on the head, that keyword margin. If you can still maintain margin and not kind of lose complete perspective of just throwing the kitchen sink in terms of advertising and 3xing your budget on the day because you think it's going to bring you 3x in terms of results. If you can protect that margin, I think it's a win-win. I think there's always two schools of thoughts. I think you've always, you've mentioned it already, Travis, like the naysayers, folks that are already sort of primed to spend. We don't need to convert them. They're going to be spending. But there's such a lot of noise on the day that you still need to push people in the right direction, the direction being your brand. And then there's the other school of thought of, like I said, just absolutely throwing everything, maxing out your budget over those 4 days. And then suddenly you're left with nothing post the event. And we've spoken at length now about what happens post-event. And if you can still hold some back and maintain that margin, I think that's your sort of that sweet spot that you're aiming for.
And it is that, you don't need to put every single SKU on offer or in the sale. You can put a tiny percentage of what you have as an offering. You're still getting somewhere in that, consumer atmosphere. People are searching your product, you're popping up as you've got a promotion. And what we saw with that one particular brand was the sales weren't necessarily coming from those prime products. They were reaching that product, seeing that there was more to offer and purchasing full price. So it was just like that little tiny open gate in order to really, really use that increased traffic as well.
Yeah, and if I can come in, just one last thing on Emma's point is putting yourself in the shopper's shoes. Mike hit on it earlier about sort of what was happening over Prime Day at the time. World Cup was on. Certainly from the United States, there was a lot of noise coming out of the States, and we all know, sort of Amazon lives and dies by what happens in the States. So just put yourself in your shopper's shoes. What are the immediate needs? Certainly from USN's perspective, we've got electrolyte sort of products or electrolyte forward products, and we absolutely highlighted those. Certainly from an everyday essential perspective, we understand that you might have just recently bought your protein powder or your creatine for the next 60 days or for the next 30 days. So you might not actively be looking at that stuff because you're stocked up and you're pretty good. But what we did really well was looking at what are the other products in the lineup outside of electrolytes, but something that you might not think about every day. So whether that be a magnesium supplement or whether that be amino acids. You've heard a little bit about amino acids. You don't take it every day. Let's put that on promo, 20% off an amino supplement. All of a sudden, folks are looking at that instead of already having bought their sort of usual stash. Let's see how we can get folks to look at some of the other products in your lineup.
Yeah, you touched on a really important point there. I think everyone just goes for, look, let's hammer in our hero ASINs. We know they sell, but if you already know they sell, why would you kind of discount it and sort of cut your nose off there and cut the revenue there? Do you guys think there is any merit in introducing more tail end ASINs, more lower ASP and introduction into the brand? They don't need to be your hero products. If a product sells every day of the week at full RRP, why would you discount it during Prime Day, essentially? Well, what are your thoughts on that? Maybe focusing more on the tail end of selection. Do you think there's merit in it? Or do you sort of think it could just be potentially throwing good money after bad, if I can say it like that?
If you do it strategically and properly, then I don't see any harm in using a product that isn't a hero product. In order for your product to grow organically, you need to have an increase in purchase, an increase in reviews. Amazon want to see that go in. So if you've got a potential to almost step up the game when it comes to selling that product in a 4-day window, why not give it a chance? You don't have to throw thousands or millions at it. It's a potential there to help grow a non-hero product to then become hero status. I don't see any harm at all in using that to help grow.
I've seen brands use Prime Days, Black Fridays as a launch pad for a new product launch. as long as you've got the price setting beforehand with an Amazon, so launch it about a month earlier, then utilize that increased traffic, see who's there. You know, I'm not going to say that reviews don't matter, but you're cutting through noise. That, as PJ was saying before, it's all about cutting through noise in these big event days. If you can show any product at the top and it's got USPs and a reason to buy versus the other ones that are there, if it gets the click, you're halfway there. You know, that's ultimately what you're looking for. So I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what product, because of course you will have some that are heroes that will fly. But if you've got a great promotion, you've got great USP, great content, there's no reason why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, Mike, just to your final point. And I'm not saying this is the case with all of them, but often your SKUs that are on the tail end of your portfolio or of your catalog, they're there for a reason. Either they're not selling because potentially folks don't need them or don't want them, but more often than not, which I've seen happen quite often, is they're just not optimized the way that your hero SKUs are. We tend to focus on the hero SKUs. The content is phenomenal. The USPs are great, but then you look at the ones that are at the bottom end of your catalog, and they are those tail enders. They probably need a little bit of work. So if you are going to advertise, just make sure that those are optimized. Your content looks great. Your content is at the level of your hero SKUs, because you could just be wasting money advertising a SKU that's not well optimized.
Give them some time ahead, like you do with the hero products. Like there could be a very, very simple reason as to why that product isn't performing. So yeah, I totally agree. Make sure that they're cared for like the heroes are.
Brilliant. And maybe flipping it on its head, obviously Prime Day, Black Friday, those are sort of the big wow hero events. Within Amazon, if you had to take part in every single, we've got our hero events, we have our mini peaks as we call them, or mini events, your Valentine's Day, your Father's Day, your spring sales, your end of summer sales. What do those smaller deal events help you do in terms of priming yourself for Prime Day and Black Friday? Do you think there's any merit in taking part of them to sort of gain any early customer buy-in, or like you mentioned earlier on, Mike, actually launching products in more mini peak events, so by the time Black Friday, Prime Day comes around, you've got your reviews and ratings, you've got your sales velocity, you've got your awareness. What are your guys' thoughts on mini peak events that lead up to Prime Day and further beyond into other more hero events?
Yeah.
And something. Sorry, Mike. You go first.
Oh, go on. Okay, yeah. I think you mentioned a good few points there in terms of a good few reasons why. But one of the key things for me, if you want to be savvy, is looking at competitor promotions, what their price is going to be, because you will be surprised at how similar, if not the exact same, they are at every single peak event. You know, you can use tools like Keeper. You can look at a fair few different tools that will tell you on the price history. But just knowing which products you're going to be competing with in the future events and what price it's going to be, that might then dictate your strategy further on. If you're in an extremely price sensitive market, it's extremely important, because it could be the difference of £1, which yes could affect the margin, but could be a big factor that customers buy towards. So I would absolutely use just insights of what other competitors are doing as something to use those smaller events for.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, it's sort of a promotional schedule is something that I'm always quite passionate about, and I think the great thing about Amazon is if you're a really small brand where you don't have a retail presence, you've only got an online presence, you could basically schedule your promotions and model your entire calendar according to an Amazon promotional schedule. I'm not saying that you have to take part in every single promo that's out there that's offered by Amazon, but certainly you could really model your entire 12-month calendar around the peak events, obviously either June, July, and then again in October, and then take part in the smaller ones. And really that kind of can give you a bit of direction if you feel like, well, should I be on promotion? Should I not be on promotion? I think it's a far easier lift for you to align yourself with an Amazon promotion as opposed to you as your brand trying to create hype around a promotion that you're funding yourself or that you're running on your own website. I think it's a lot easier just to tag along with where the fish are, essentially. And if the fish are on Amazon during those prime events and those big deal events, absolutely go and align yourself with those. So I think it does make it easier. Different strokes for different folks. If you have retail presence, obviously it's not as simple. But yeah, Amazon makes it super simple for you to be able to take part in promos throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. Also, one to watch out is that sometimes can see a promo as like a small promo with an Amazon, but they soon grow. Like what we saw from back to school maybe 2-3 years ago wasn't as big as it is now. Like we're seeing phenomenal growth and phenomenal sales come through back to school promotions from like June, July onwards to September. And it's not necessarily that it's just back to school, it's parents back to, I don't know, back to routine or something like that. So there's these tiny little micro sale days that could then grow into something bigger. So to not take part of them or to not monitor them could be quite detrimental to the brand.
And on back to school as well, that has now been confirmed as a tier 1 event by Amazon.
Yeah.
So they are putting marketing behind it. They are going to be pushing it over the next, it'll be about a month or so, I would say, is when they're really going to start hammering home. This is a great opportunity for everyone on this course to be looking at that and going, if you didn't know this information, what can you do? Is your product relevant for back to school? Not just back to school as well, back to uni, some back to work,
back to
for
anything.
parents. So there is more than just back to school. But the really important thing, I know it's the primary conversation, but the really important thing for back to school is that it is not a 4-day event. It's like a 4-week event. You know, you can have a really high peak and have that carrying over. So that could be a real key insight to take away and be like, okay, how am I going to forecast and work around this? We've got about a month. So I'd move quite quickly on that.
And you'd be shocked as to what falls within the back to school type search and sales. So you might think it's not necessarily suitable for back to school, but you never know. Like electrolytes, they seem to have an increase in purchasing behavior. I know my daughter does gymnastics and that stops in the summer. When gymnastics starts, electrolyte sales sit within that back to school time period. So it's like some little things like that that can make a massive difference. Yeah.
I think it's how you position your product. So uni time like that, I was classic broke student. I would live off of protein shakes because it meant I didn't have to spend money on actual food. So I think it's product positioning, right market, right time. PJ, to your point, different strokes for different folks. Essentially, if people have certain needs, you need to be the first in line. You need to be first with the advertising. You need to have a competitive price point. Otherwise, we all know, well, we're all Amazon shoppers. You vote with your wallet, essentially. Yes, a product could be fit for purpose, but if there's a like-for-like comparison and the reviews and ratings are strong on another one and the pricing's better, 99% of the time, unless you're a super brand loyal customer, you're going to go to someone else.
Yeah. And just to my earlier point about putting yourself in your shopper's shoes, you don't have to overcomplicate it. Just think about how you would do things on Amazon. What would you buy on Amazon during that time? Certainly back to school for us, the focus will be on bars and convenience. So bars and ready to drink protein shakes, to your point, Travis. Yes, you can mix your own protein shakes, but why not buy a ready to drink? So what are those things that full lunch boxes, essentially? And yes, as a brand, we don't overtly advertise to young children, but certainly in the higher age group, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, from a school perspective, what are those things that can fill lunch boxes that are healthy to eat, bars, convenience? So yeah, like Emma said, just because your product doesn't strictly fall within the back to school caveat, or at least niche, certainly there are opportunities for you to make a really decent amount of sales. It's a sales event. It doesn't really matter. It says back to school, but your product's on sale. So folks will naturally be inclined, whether they've got children or not, going back to school.
Brilliant. I love the passion on deals. Yeah, whether it's Prime Day, whether it's back to school, there's always passion behind it. We're leading into the last 10 minutes now, so maybe just a few closing questions. How can brands prepare better next time, in your view? Well, the good, the bad, the ugly. How can brands prepare better for next time to make a success out of Prime Day 2.0, next year's Prime Day, Black Friday? Are there any secret sauce tips that you guys can give for brands to plan better, essentially, and be ready?
It's not so secret sauce, because I think I say it every single time, but your content. Is your content where it needs to be? Have you noticed where conversions dropped in a product that you thought would actually do really well? Look to see if there's something missing from your written content, your imagery content. Look at competitors. What are they doing? What do you believe is making them convert better? When you look at the market share, look as to who had an increased market share within that time period and just see if there's something that they're doing different. Again, the set and forget when it comes to content can't happen. We're in such a visual world, and I will preach it all day, every day, that you need to ensure that your seasonality, your promotions, your content is flexible and is competitive, if that makes sense.
We'll say as well, Anna, you wrote a great LinkedIn post about it the other week, but I think it was you, Trav, actually. The seasonal content, and actually having Christmassy things in there, around Christmas. Give that a go. Why not around Black Friday? There's a few things that you could do there in preparation. Less so in the middle of the year after Prime Day, but definitely for Q4, why not? But on my side, it's data, and data's a blanket term, but in terms of specifics of what I'd be looking to download and actually have access to for the next one, I'll be downloading all ad data from campaign level and seeing what I've been working. I would also be looking at it on a product level and seeing the trends there. Instead of it just being, here's a big spreadsheet, I would do it in multiple different facets where it would be a lot of spreadsheets, but do it by day and really have a look by day at what's been going on, because you want to know the trends pre-Prime Day, you want to know the trends on Prime Day, you want to know the trends afterwards. That will help all future success of events. Also within vendor or seller, look at the sales report overall and see, again, product performance from there, not just from advertising side, because you need to know as well if your ads ran out at a certain point. So maybe a budget report, look at these things, because that will impact the overall sales volume that you saw as a total. So that should make sure you're comparing everything. But the more you can download and have banked and saved, the better.
Yeah, agreed with everything you've said, both Emma and Mike. I think content is probably first and foremost, and then data probably a close second. But it's not a secret. It's like you said on upfront, Travis. It's fundamentals. You kind of have to get everything right, and it sounds daunting, but it doesn't have to be. Just make sure that you're doing the brilliant basics every day. From a brand perspective, certainly on vendor, make sure that you've got your POs in place. Obviously, full rates are decided upstream of those big events, so make sure that you've got those in order. Make sure that you understand how the buy box works. I think too often folks believe it's just around pricing. Is your fulfillment in order? Have you got the buy box based on price, fulfillment, content, reviews, the entire sort of flywheel effect that comes with that? So understanding that, I think, would be really valuable to brands. And then just having those basics in place and stay the course, I think, is important. It's just trust in the process. Do what you can. Make sure that your content is updated seasonally. Make sure that it addresses pain points potentially within the reviews. But just make sure that you are staying the course. You know what's worked for you in the past. When it comes to forecasting, history kind of repeats itself. You kind of have a vague idea of what forecasting should look like. But yeah, I think if you get all of those, it sounds simple. I know it's not as simple as that, but if you can do those things, you're putting yourself in the best possible position, I think, for the rest of the year.
You touched on reviews. That's one thing I missed, is you're going to have potentially an increase in purchases, an increase in reviews. Those fresh reviews can give you insight as to what you can do from a content perspective or a written content perspective for the next sales event, or just moving forward. You don't need a sales event to enhance your content, and that's the voice of the customer. So always use that.
Yeah, and don't just look at the bad stuff, look at the good stuff too. If your product is being highlighted for the good that you're doing and the reviews are coming back great, double down on those. Make sure that you're highlighting those. So look at the good and the bad.
Exactly. Yeah.
You touched on a strong point. There's the reviews don't lie, essentially. Use it to, like you say, PJ, better inform what you're doing well, double down on it. Or in your case, are customers loving the effects they're getting from your products? Are they loving the flavors? Are they loving the convenience? Could there be any negatives in terms of they may be receiving products that are damaged? If it's an Amazon problem, really drill down into the good, the bad, the ugly, essentially. And just for maybe some closing remarks from you guys, what would your top 3 tips be each for hero deal events? It doesn't have to be Prime Day. It could be Black Friday. It could be Christmas. It could be whatever, depending on what category you operate in. But what would your individual top 3 tips be from each of you?
Be prepared, always. From an inventory, from a content, just make sure that you're prepared. Flexibility in the fact that I don't think Amazon are going to shift away from 4 days of or if they do, we'll be very, very happy. But just to make sure that you can be flexible within that time period and hold your ground. If you are seeing that competitors are dropping price, don't race to the bottom. Make sure that you can still maintain that margin if that's part of your growth plan. But yeah, hold your ground. Don't race to the bottom at all.
Thanks
Yeah,
so much.
I mean, can I just steal your three, Emma? My very first one that I thought of was just be prepared. And like it's the exact same thing. It's prepare early. I'm already having Q4 conversations. Like it needs to happen as soon as Prime Day is finished, pretty much. So preparing early is absolutely key. And if you haven't started thinking about Q4, then you're probably 3 months late anyway. So definitely get ahead of that. Adjust again, similar to what Emma said. So be ready to adjust, be agile, be flexible, go off the trends that you are seeing, and not just a raw is what it is. If you see trends, let's adapt to them, and then continue advertising. Don't stop. So continue to build that momentum if you can, and you can afford that from a budget perspective. See how much you can capitalize on post Prime Day. The event is 4 days. The customers that are on Amazon are not there for 4 days; they're there for a lot longer.
Brilliant. And anything from your side, PJ?
Well, going last is tough because everything's been taken. I will say being prepared is important. I think the only build on that point is you can never start your preparation too early. That sounds ridiculous, but you probably should be looking at Prime Day 2027, whether that be in June or July. You can't start that preparation too early. And I think the only other really valuable top tip I can add is if you've got a really big portfolio, big or small, you don't have to put everything on promo. Just make sure you're being strategic, see what's selling, what content looks really spivvy on your site, which of your PDPs are optimized really well, and double down on those. You don't have to put everything on promo.
Brilliant. No, so thanks, everyone. Really do appreciate the insights. We're drawing down to the end of the webinar now. So firstly, thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciated your insights, and I'm sure the viewers really appreciated them too. I've got to apologize for my dodgy internet, everyone. I'm going to have a very fun call with my internet provider after this, so wish me luck. But I think just as a closing statement from our side, Prime Day is essentially the catalyst going into H2 of the year. It's the really big Euro event that kicks off the year, going into end of summer sale, going into autumn deals / Prime Day 2.0, whatever label you want to put on it, Black Friday, Christmas, and then ultimately New Year, New You. And then we do it all again. Exciting times, guys. So if you do have any further questions, please feel free to invite any of our panelists on LinkedIn and reach out to them, or directly, if you'd like to reach out to us, our email address is hello@ventureforge.co.uk. Even if you just want to call, want to pick our brains a little bit, need help with any analysis, need help with any planning, we're always here to help. We want to be your preferred agency partner. So thanks very much for your time, everyone, and we'll see you on the other side. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.